Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time today to be live with us. We have a very special guest today, Liam Mucklow, founder of Canada's Golf Lab. I'm Chris Hart. I have Terry Hashimoto and John Cork from BodiTrak Sports. We're going to, we're excited that you're here today. And I want to give a little bit of background on Liam Mucklow. As I mentioned before, he is the founder of Canada's Golf Lab and a TPI advisory board. Today we're going to discuss using ground forces to generate power. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Liam Mucklow.
Okay, all right. Hey everybody, thanks a lot for joining us here and sitting in. We've got some pretty good stuff planned for us, and you know, it's just about time to head outside here in Toronto. So hopefully wherever you're at, you're already outside and playing golf, and this will give you a couple ideas that you can take right to your lesson tee tomorrow. You know, for those of you that don't know me, I do specialize in power coaching. I spent a few years on the World Long Drive Tour back in the early 2000s and competed on various professional tours around the world. And you know, I've really spent about the last 8 or 10 years of my career trying to figure out what it was that I did that allowed me to generate club head speeds, you know, at my best north of 130, and then understand how I could take those things that I naturally did well and teach recreational golfers to generate more club heads. I am very fortunate in the fact that I've had the chance to work with multiple World Long Drive champions, but at the same time, my day-to-day and the way I pay my mortgage is actually through helping someone increase swing speed from 85 to 95. So we're going to go through today. I'm going to show you a couple things about how I use the integrated V1 and BodiTrak software, how I read the information from both pieces of technology, and then also walk you through a couple basic drill progressions to tap both generating more vertical energy and getting some more power out of lateral energy transfer. So I guess you know, to get started, we're gonna start off and we're gonna separate everything, I guess, into the two different displays that you know, that we have up there. So maybe I've got my one of my assistants here to run the computer, Eddie. Maybe if you could flip over to the V1 screen so people can see the different screens I'm talking about. You see here a freeze frame of an impact position, but really what we've got is we've got the peak velocity chart, which you see on the left, and the COP trace that you see on the right. And I guess the first way that I like people to think about these two things is when I'm talking about peak velocity, that's letting me know how fast can this golfer move? You know, how fast can they transfer weight from one side to the other? How fast can they rotate their pelvis? And you know, we see a very strong correlation between the high peak velocities, high club head speeds from TrackMan, and obviously the fast rotational speeds that we get from the 3D systems we use. When we go to look at a person's COP trace, to me that's more the fingerprint of their golf swing. You know, one of the things I think is important is, while we definitely identify patterns amongst players, and the power trace is the one we're going to spend the most time talking about today, I still always compare this as a sample of one. So when I first look at a new golfer and I'm looking at what their COP trace is, that tells me how they interact with the ground, and the ground is actually the source for all of the energy that's gonna allow them to rotate and strike the golf ball quickly. So maybe now, Eddie, if you could switch back over to the other camera. Okay. So I guess, you know, one of the things I want to understand when it comes to looking at the pressure trace. You know, I think for most of you out there, if you have a BodiTrak, you're probably familiar with the concept of the power trace. And the power trace that we talk about is where we see, you know, initially we see the center of pressure starting to move towards the target, and then pre-impact we actually see the center of pressure start to back up. Okay. And I'm going to talk first, I guess, about kind of the two things, primary and secondary causes of this, and then talk a little bit about it on the functional side as to why we see this happen in the fastest swingers of the golf ball. So, you know, the primary reason why we see that pressure trace start to back up pre-impact is actually when a golfer that creates high club head speed pushes off the ground. They do it with such a tremendous amount of force that we actually see the inside and sometimes the entire sole of the lead foot lift off the ground. And of course, the technology of the BodiTrak sensing downward pressure, as that lifts off, that's going to give it a lower pressure reading. So that's the primary contributor to that power trace. The secondary one is we actually, you know, pre-impact, as we see the trail leg start to go into triple extension. For those of you, is the simultaneous extension of the hip, knee, and the ankle. That creates a tremendous amount of pressure down on the inside of the trail foot. So both of those acting coordinated, both in terms of timing and the direction that they're generating the force in, is what causes that COP trace to back up. So we'll just give you an idea of what that looks like. Eddie, maybe if you can just switch back over to the V1 screen here. Okay, perfect. So we're going to just call up, me hitting a driver here. So you can see the pressure trace up here in the top right. You can see how quickly it starts to go towards the target, but then very early in the downswing we see it back up completely. Now you'll notice my lead foot pressure is only showing 10%, and that's at the exact same time that we see the inside of this lead leg starting to lift and roll. We see a tremendous amount of pressure back here on the toe of the trail foot, and again, that's happening at the exact same time that we see this triple extension of the knee, ankle, and hip. And you'll see that that footwork pretty common right there on the long drive tour. You know, in fact, one of the things for those of you that haven't had a chance to work with world long drive athletes, it's very common for us to see what we call blackout, where at the moment of impact they actually have both feet completely off the mat and then come back down. So let's get it back over to the other thing. I'm going to talk a little bit about the velocity. So you know, the peak velocity to me is kind of tells me how fast can that golfer ignite the fuse? How fast can they fire from one side to the other, and not just going from right to left, but how fast can the lead leg react and start to press straight up out of the ground to resist the lateral movement that's being produced by the trail leg. The golfer's ability to perform both of those motions and generate that power in sync with each other is going to have a huge effect on the actual amount of controllable rotational velocity that they can generate. Of course, even though we're talking power, we definitely want to make sure that our golfers are finding the fairway. So as we start to move on now, and I'm going to walk everybody through a couple of my favorite training techniques. Just the one thing that I want to talk about, I'll show everyone a quick example. When we're talking about these elements, this is specifically as it pertains to a driver. So you know, I wouldn't worry about any of this kind of stuff if you're looking at someone with 6 irons or straight down off of the ground. So Eddie, let's do the V1 back up. Okay, so just to you know, kind of try and make this clear for everybody, we're going to play just this down the line, hitting the 7 iron here. So you can see everything is fairly centered on that lead leg, and we're not going to really see any significant backup a little bit post-impact. And this is what we see even from the longest drivers of the ball, but this is specifically when they're hitting the golf ball down off the ground. Then, of course, as we get in here to the driver, we're going to see a higher peak velocity. I sure hope we see a higher peak velocity with the driver. And then you're going to see that COP aggressively back up. So when I'm going to just pull up another golfer here, and I want to show you just a little bit different pattern. So Randy here's one of our guys at the lab, and I'll tell you what, if you don't hit the golf ball a long way, this is a pretty tough place to work, because Randy's another guy that moves it up there at 130. But if you take a look, we see a completely different pattern than he did with my swing, and a different one again from what we're going to see with our next case study. So if we take a look, Randy moves very strongly into the lead foot. And when we look at the peak velocity, we don't see nearly as big a spike of the movement lateral back away from the target. We also see in the pressure trace that the backup isn't nearly as much as what it was in my golf swing. And when we actually correlate that into performance, the biggest difference that we see is in angle of attack. So we all know that that's very important to be able to drive the golf ball as far as possible. And when the golfer doesn't have enough of a backup on their COP trace, they're going to get a little bit ahead of the golf ball. They're going to be much more likely to strike down on it. So we're going to put this up head-to-head here with Randy's final golf swing. Just after giving him one or two things here, and we can see how he actually is going to be able to stay a little bit more behind the golf ball. And you see his pressure trace now backs up significantly more. We can see a much bigger spike on the peak velocity curve down below the x-axis. And when we correlate that to actual performance, we were able to create a positive shift in angle of attack by about 3 degrees, which for those of you out there that understand how big of a difference that can make on reducing spin loft and allowing Randy to play a lower lofted driver, he was able to net out about 25 yards from just that simple adjustment. Now, the next case study that I want to just walk everybody through is another long drive competitor, and his name's Mike Wee. Mike was pound for pound the longest driver of the golf ball throughout most of the 2000s until Sadlowski hit the scene. And if you notice right off the bat, again, this is where I always talk about how important it is to operate with a sample size of 1. Completely different way that Mike generates his power. So I think this is probably a good time to also point out one of the things that does have a very big effect on how much end club head speed the player generates is their mass. So if you notice, Mike's a little bit different body type than Randy, so he has to have much more efficient use of the ground in order to generate that same 130 plus club head speed. So if you notice, Mike makes a really nice turn deep back into his right heel. You can see he gets his upper body drifting behind the golf ball and generates a very high peak velocity early in the transition. And then you're going to see right here also how much COP backup there is. Mike was able to compete at a very high level because his ball flight was among the most efficient out there. Not only was he a very good ball striker, but we've got him recorded with angle of attacks up to 7, 8, 9 degrees, which allows him to play a very low lofted driver and create ideal launch conditions very easily, even at 195 miles an hour. So when when we take a look at a player like this and we see him doing so many things so well, we want to increase speed. Still, what you see we did here, we simply just went with Mike and explained to him what he was doing to generate the speed, and wanted to make sure that, unlike Randy, we didn't want to see a change in the pressure trace. When we see a change in the pressure trace, to me that means we're changing the way the person moves. As we look at Mike here, clearly he's very, very efficient, so we don't want to change his technique. We just want to work on increasing capacity. So, you know, we went through and did that. I'm going to actually just switch to the face-on view here. So as we went with Mike, really we just wanted him to get, you know, even more aggressive and create more vertical energy. Feel like he's got more of a jump on the downswing. So you can see there's his first one. There's his second one. You could see the lead heel is coming up off the ground not only a little bit earlier on this one, but also a little bit more. You know, so over the course of just doing this small case study, he was able to cheat about another 2 or 3 miles an hour out, strictly by trying to increase capacity. So now I'm going to walk through and just show everybody a couple of the drills that I like to do to help people with generating coordinated techniques like this. So this is my favorite one. You know, this is a progression that I find myself doing on a very regular basis. You know, a lot of the golfers when they come to me, actually, Eddie, let's get you to, you know, I'm going to demonstrate this first, and then we'll come back and analyze. Good. So a lot of golfers, when they first come in to see me, you know, they want to hit it farther. They come in here, they go through our baseline testing. We gather all of this information plus 3D and TrackMan, and then we start down. We talk to them. Well, what are you working on? What do you need to do? And, you know, everything that I hear anecdotally from golfers has to do with rotation. I need to make a fuller turn back this way, or I'm trying to turn more through this way. I'm trying to get more hip turn. I'm trying to get more separation. The reality of it is that most golfers maximize use of their engine already. And I like to try and separate my thinking when I'm analyzing a golfer, saying, look, are we looking to work with their rotary engine, or are we trying to work with their vertical engine? And it's about 80% of golfers that I work with, the easiest way to add them club head speed is going to be through teaching them to work with the ground better. So the first thing that I like to start to do is to have them do this simple jump and swing drill. So I'll have them take the club up to the top of their backswing. I'll make them kind of shake out, release the tension, and then I'm going to ask them to jump. And the most common thing I see is people rise up on the backswing, and then I ask them to jump. They look at me with a puzzled look and can't really do it. I said, no, if you're going to jump, what are you going to do? And then you see them all of a sudden start to squat down. The first thing I'll do is have them freeze right here. And this is where the power is going to start. And the way they're going to start to learn how to use it is to get to this position and jump up and swing down at the exact same time. And we can actually get them to start doing this fairly quickly, where they're going to hit the golf ball. So I will start working this with an iron. Just a little shorter club is a little easier for them to hit on the face. I'll have them go to the top of the backswing. They're ready, and go ahead, jump and swing. So now let's take a look at that on the V1. I'll show you how we analyze it. Okay, so here you can see that I'm frozen up here at the top. And so I'll start to introduce them to a couple of concepts. One of my favorite ways just to communicate this stuff simply is just to put a line across their belt. And we're going to show them that as they start to have that belt rise higher and higher up above the line, they're going to start to generate more and more speed. If you're working them through, talking to them about the the BodiTrak software displays. This is very effective for getting, for getting the COP backup, which you'll see over on the right-hand side. In fact, it's the easiest way that I've found to have everybody quickly and easily generate that power trace. And for case studies like Randy that we saw earlier, that have that strong peak velocity on the positive side, but don't balance it out with the same thing down here on the negative side. It's a great training mechanism to get them the feel for how to synchronize this into their full golf swing. So that's step 1 of the progression. I'm going to show you step 2 of the progression here. And so what we'll do is we'll demonstrate this again over here. Once they've started to generate some success with this, it's pretty motivating for them. We'll use the launch monitor to quantify the speed, but typically you'll find one of your clients with very poor ground reaction force skill will achieve between 95 and 105% of their club head speed with that last drill. Yeah, it's always great to see the look on people's face when they swing harder with no backswing. Anyway, so the next swing we're going to do is to try and build it into a little bit more like their full swing. So we're still going to have the person go to the top of the backswing, and they're going to stop below the movement. I usually like to have it stop for about 3 seconds. I'm going to talk to them about where I want their belt buckle to go. I want it to start to go down and towards the target, and then I'm going to want to have it rise straight up out the ground. So we'll start to get them to work this pattern in slow motion. They'll be up at the top, then go down, and then start to spring up. And again, we can start to have people actually hit balls within this drill. So let's take a look and see what this looks like on the V1. So, and this is where I like to just, take the lines before we go ahead and do it. I'm going to want to show them where I want the belt buckle to go, and then we can start to see if they're actually able to go through those movements. So you can see there, again, this proves very effective at getting increases in the peak velocity here, and also in the top right you can see creating this COP backup prior to impact. Now I'm going to go through here, I'm going to show you my next drill that I would use for people that struggle generating speed on the top side of peak velocity. So we can do this one straight on the video. It's fairly simple. It's a slightly modified version of step transition for those of you that are familiar with that. But what I like to do is have the player load up, similar to a baseball player, and then obviously just stride through. Now, when we do this drill, I want to just make sure everybody understands that we're focused on helping that golfer generate greater amounts of speed from the trail leg. So this is something we're going to try and get faster, more aggressive weight shift, more aggressive with the trail leg triple extension. When we do this, we do see increases in speed, absolutely, but you'll see for the first time here where the power trace broke down. And of course, we're not going to see that in this drill, and we're also not going to see any peak velocity down here on the bottom side. So those would be I guess my 2 biggest go-to drills. I'm going to show you guys a couple other, I think creative ways that I use this to try and, I guess, trick people into doing what I want. So for those of you that know me, you know that I do a lot of multi-sport work. So I wanted to give you an idea of the things you can do to help your golfers transfer skills they already have from other sports. My 2 favorite types of athletes to work with are people that play racket sports you know, whether it's tennis, squash, badminton, and baseball and hockey players. Again, they have great lateral. So you can see here when we take a tennis racket, the COP trace on the top right, we see the same tendencies of the COP backup. When we take a look at the video, we see secondary axis tilt, all these same things we do in golf. And if you take a player that has a tennis background, hand them a tennis racket, get them on your BodiTrak, and start to toss them balls, you're going to be able to show them side by side how they're making a more desirable movement with something that they're comfortable with. Then they can more easily transfer the skill. Here's, you know, the next one I like is where I'll get people to hit baseballs. And you can see when we have the baseball players in, we still get the COP backup that we want to see, striking the ball out in front of them, right hand underneath the bat, but you see a greater spike in the positive peak velocity. Versus when we look at the racket sports players, we see a bigger spike in the negative peak velocity. So when you understand some of these principles, not only can you get your athlete to rely on skills they've developed in other sports, but you can implement some cross-training to help them develop these patterns more efficiently. Okay, perfect. So that brings us to the half-hour mark. What I was hoping to do now would be open it up to the floor for questions. Let's get through all of the information I wanted to through today. I don't know, maybe Chris or John, if you guys are monitoring, you can jump in and give us a hand. We field the questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Liam. That was incredibly useful information. What I would like to invite is the folks that are on the actual Hangout. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a square box, and if you click that, you should be able to then select Q&A. We'd like to get, we have a couple questions already.
Just waiting on questions.
Yeah, no, it's, do we just use sound? Why doesn't this stuff stay open?
Hold on, ladies and gentlemen. It looks like I inadvertently hit the mute button here, but we'll work into get that back. We're back. Hey, John, we're back now. So you want to proceed with your question?
Yeah. Have we got any coming in there, Chris?
Yep, we're good.
Okay. Is there any questions? I don't think I've got any yet.
Waiting for John to come back on. He's dropped off here for a second, but I think we've got our sound back, which is great.
Okay, perfect.
Gary, you got some of the questions there that we had from earlier? Or John, you're back.
Yeah. I have a question. Now, this is primarily for a driver, right, Liam? We're not talking about irons backing up. How does irons and backup? How does that come into play with it?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, the COP backup is correlated to the angle of attack. The value we look at from TrackMan. So, like we showed that 7-iron swing right off the start, we wouldn't want to see a COP back up there, because then we run the risk of moving the low point back behind the golf ball, which obviously is going to be disastrous for consistent contact on the balls on the ground. We see the COP back up in with the drivers almost as a necessity, because that's what that facilitates a positive angle of attack, allows us to strike the ball in the upswing, minimize spin lock, maximize compression, and ultimately get the most efficient maximum distance for whatever the speed is that we can generate.
I really like the analogy with the racket sports and the baseball guys. Now, you've done a lot of other sport work, so baseball power, would you call that baseball power trace almost identical to that of a long hitter's trace? Is it pretty similar? And it looks very similar to me from what I've seen there today.
With the baseball one, yeah. So the baseball I see is pretty similar when if someone again is hitting a pop fly. So when I think about baseball, I can't help but think about it in terms of TrackMan numbers, I guess. So when I think about someone who's going to be hitting the ball down, hitting line drives, hitting singles, we're going to see less of a COP backup. If we take a look at someone, I guess we're in Toronto, so I guess when Joey Bats hits one out of the park, back here, a little bit more, we're going to see a little more of the lead leg come unglued from the ground. We're going to see a little more force generated from the trail leg. So it is, it's very similar. The one where I see the strongest similarity is actually in the ground stroke of a tennis player. When I take a look at the way that they deliver the racket to both generate maximum speed of the tennis ball, but also create that top spin. That's, for me, that's the strongest.
Right.
What I see in a world long drive competitor.
Hey, Liam, we have a question that came in online from Lars Otterstrom. The question is, the principles you're talking about, are they applicable to all players, or would you suggest them to a certain player of certain ability?
Well, yeah, so good question. And the things that I've tried to touch on today, are physical, biomechanical concepts that transcend sport. So, do these things apply to every golfer? Yes, they do. Can you do each one of these things with every golfer? No, you can't. And that's where I think it's very important when you go through the assessment process with any new client to understand what their capacity is, both in terms of movement, but also speed and power generation, and tackle the areas that you can work on. So if you have someone that has certain limitations, you're going to have to go through and obviously work around that. So for example, if I have someone that has a right-handed golfer that has a damaged, surgically repaired LCL on their lead knee, as much as I may want to do the step drill, that's not going to be a good, safe one to apply with them. So I'm going to have to take that concept and I'm going to have to start to work in a little bit different way. In that particular example, I would be going more to one of the two jump drills to make sure that the knee isn't absorbing any lateral pressure and add power that way. So if you take the right steps to find out everything possible about your athlete, you're going to start to understand where you can safely increase swing speed without injury risk.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question that just came in. One suggestion, Liam, if you could move a little bit closer to the camera, I think it would help.
Sure.
The question is, do you have the same observation for women for everything you discussed today?
Well, good question. So I would say certain women I have the same observation, but again, women do generate power in a little bit different way. Typically, they're more flexible, so they're going to be able to get greater range of motion. A lot of the women that I deal with in particular, again, I'm going to say they maximize their rotation. They're making the swing as long as they can, and most of them barely move the needle when it comes to actually generating some force with the ground. You know, when it comes to working with female athletes, definitely my favorites again are going to be tennis and baseball, because that gives them that background of how to drive with their legs and channel rotational energy out towards their body. You know, when it comes to women, I find the step drill to be very effective, because it actually forces them to drive off the trail legs. A lot of times I feel like the women that come and I work with them are really just kind of spinning like a top. We actually need to try and almost get them to rotate less and add significantly more verticals. The other thing that I found that is sometimes the easiest possible way to help women generate more club head speed is actually to work on grip strength. So, you know, again, just something that you can go ahead and try, but absolutely I would be working on these same principles with women.
Excellent, thank you.
I've got 2 questions from John McIsaac at Energy Sports, and he just emailed them to me. Liam, if you can hear me.
Yep, you betcha, Terry.
In the first example with the big fellow there, he asked about John wants to know if his TrackMan numbers were completely different in impact than the second fellow who had the very high club head speed.
Yeah, 100% they were. So, you know, Randy, the first guy, the baseball player, he's generating speeds up at the 130 mile an hour mark. But his impact interval definitely isn't as efficient. Typically, we'll see angle of attacks ranging anywhere from 1 down to 4 down. You know, you can attribute that to seeing minimal secondary axis tilt, minimal COP backup, versus Mike, the second swing that we profiled, generating club head speeds in the same realm with a much stronger COP backup. We see his angle of attack is reached as far as 6-7 degrees upwards, which of course on a solid center strike allows him to generate significantly less spin while achieving optimum launch angle. So it's far more efficient for both the tee deck at the long drive tour, but also on the golf course.
So in the first example, just in sort of in layman's terms, the club face was coming in closed.
Coming in steep.
Steep. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, when I don't have the COP backup this way, it's going to be nearly impossible for me to strike the ball on the upswing while having a mechanically efficient impact position. You know, I'm gonna have to, if I just keep diving forward this way, I'm gonna have to artificially try and pull the club up, which isn't gonna help me maximize speed. When the COP starts to back up, that, you know, it tilts the whole club head delivery upwards. It's gonna be very critical for anyone that wants to get the most out of their speed. You know, so to me, I guess again, the way I look at it, the peak velocity is very strongly correlated to the club head speed they generate, and the COP trace is very strongly correlated. The shape of the COP trace is very strongly correlated to their actual club delivery. You know, so that'd be their angle of attack and club path.
Yeah, and I have a question for you. At what point, just basically, do you feel that they should begin to, if you know, I'm not sure if the right term is pull up, but using that spring effect, if you will, what is the, relative to where the club is in space, where do you want them to be sort of holding? I know you mentioned the belt buckle, but
Eddie, why don't you queue up the V1 and we'll go through and look at this over here, Terry, on the screen. Okay, so all right. So what I'm going to do here, guys, I'm actually going to pull up. I'm going to pull both of these swings up. So just bear with me a second. I'm going to tuck these off over to the side here. Okay. So Terry, there we go. So just run that question to me again, if you don't mind.
Like it occurs to me that both these guys, they at their peak velocity, their club seems to be it seems to be vertical parallel when it seems to be vertical to the ground. And I'm wondering, at what point do you want your athletes to spring up on their lead side, or when's the right time to do their maximum jump?
You know, anecdotally, I always talk about it being about halfway through the golf swing. So when I'm using the video to look at it, I want to see their belt buckle rising the fastest as the golf ball is descending. But again, if you take a look here and you see Randy on the right, you know, Randy doesn't use much vertical energy in his golf swing. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
You guys got some brute strength.
Yeah.
But we look at his baseball style swing, it uses a much more lateral energy. So we see right here, you know, the peak velocity happens very early, we get it right down here when the club shaft is vertical. But I would like, you know, my preference, you know, for Randy would be to see this significantly farther down right here. I ideally like to see the peak right here on the top and the peak right here on the bottom to be fairly equal.
Okay.
Versus when we take a look here at Mike, we can see, you know, again, it happens a little bit earlier. So he's got the shaft vertical here where he's moving away from the peak. But what my preference is here is I see balance between these two.
Right.
You know, so again, I read that as you know, getting equal amounts of power from both the lateral and the vertical engine. The way I read this right here at this spot is where he's getting peak velocity to trail leg driving towards the lead leg. Now he's getting peak velocity with the lead leg driving up off the ground, which is what's going to allow him to stay back here behind the golf ball, hit on the upswing, and of course the triple extension here in the trail leg.
That's very.
Hey, Liam, we have another question from a viewer, Christopher Kenny.
Okay.
Question is, let's see, how do you develop grip strength in your female players?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the first thing, you know, there's a few different things out there depending on, you know, who you're dealing with. I guess one of the first person that comes to mind for me is one of my most recent graduates of Power Golf was a lady in her mid-60s. And with her, it was just simply starting out with squeezing stress balls and then moving up to things that are greater resistance. And then if you can get to the point, my favorite thing is actually just to have them working on holding heavier weights, not doing anything with them, just simply being able to grab onto it and hold it. And ideally, I recommend that you use something that's the same diameter as their golf grip. So again, they're going to be training their hand strength at the same diameter that they have. So yeah, I guess that's the simplest, easiest, most effective way to increase grip strength.
I got one more question, Liam, if you don't mind. And we've been looking at this from a distance perspective.
Yeah.
What do you see in trying to create some accuracy? I mean, obviously you're an expert in both areas, so like, just so the audience doesn't think that you're just entirely focused in on, you know, hitting the ball 350 yards. Not all of us are capable of doing that. What if we can't get distance and we need to get to accuracy? What's your thoughts on the best drill?
Well, you know, I think I would say one of the easiest things for people out there to allow control while, you know, still having speed. You know, I don't ever want anybody to swing slower. You know, I want them to move as fast as they can, and then if they're having an issue with control, I'm going to determine is it an issue related to club path or club face. You know, so for example, if we were to take a look at Mike, and let's say Mike had control issues, I could do something as simple as put a plane line on here. You see that club is tracking. Really, it's as far as I'm concerned, perfectly on plane, even all the way around here. So then that would let me know that, or the data from my launch model would let me know that we've got an issue as it pertains to consistent club face control. Okay, so if I need to match up club face control, what I'm going to want to take a look at is I want to make sure that there's compatibility between their hip strength and their hip speed. So when I take a look at Mike from the down the line impact position, I can see how open his hips are. The faster someone rotates the hips, the more open the hips are at impact, the stronger grip we're going to want to see. So right here with Mike, I'd say that's fairly compatible. You don't have to have fast hips to have a fast swing speed. I would be the exact opposite. And so if we go and take a look at, let's find one of my driver swings here. Okay, so if we take a look at one of my driver swings here, you're going to see that, that's the step swing. Where's my driver? We'll have to take a look at it from base on. But you're going to see that I don't get near the hip rotation that Mike gets, even though I generate a fair bit of speed. You can see right there how open his hips are compared to mine.
Yeah.
But we both control the golf ball well because we've got compatible grips. So you're going to see with me being a slower hip player, I'm going to have a much weaker grip, left and right hand. You're going to see Mike being a faster hip speed player, he's going to have a stronger grip. So if the issue for control is related to club face, that would be the way I would go. Now, if the issue was related to club path, so let's just pretend here that this swing wasn't on plane. Let's say it was it was coming outside in. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to work to reorganize the body alignments to change the direction of this pressure trace. So something, if someone's coming over the top, typically we can just drop the right foot back, stagger the right foot back. I think it's important for people out there. I don't want them to turn their entire body right of target. If I drop in their right foot back, they can maintain the body alignments, and they're going to be able to generate power in the same way. But because the feet are staggered, their center of gravity is going to travel in a different direction, which of course will cause a change in direction of the center of pressure. And a lot of the work I've been doing in here lately, we see a very strong correlation between shifting the direction of the trace and a compatible shift in club path. So let's kick over to the live one here and let me see if I can make an example of this. Okay, so if I've got a golfer that has a path-related issue, where they're going to be, let's just say, coming outside in, if I drop their trail foot back, you have to do a little bit more testing to understand exactly how that person's body operates. But if I drop that foot back, what's going to happen is now their weight shift is going to be headed out more towards the right of the target. So the club path almost always will follow. So if they have consistent face control, they need to shift path. I'm going to look at reorganizing body alignment. If they've got a quality path but issues controlling club face, I'm going to check the ratio of hip speed to grip strength.
Cool. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Well,
No problem. Any other? We got any other questions out there, guys? I guess we got about 10 minutes left.
I think that John Thorpe is having trouble technically to get back to us here, but looks like my questions you've answered. I do have one actual question that's a little bit not related to this, but is when you're talking physical, a lot of strength you have to have some strength to do these drills. What's your physical screening processes before you put the guy? Like, do you measure the length of their arms? Like, some guys have different abilities to be able to not turn their hips or turn their hips. I mean,
Yes, I've got I've got a fairly in-depth screening process, I guess. You know, we go through all of your basic TPI level 1 movement screens. So that's going to give us a basic idea of what the rotational abilities are going to be of the person, what they can and can't do. We're also going to understand if there's other things we can tackle. In the TPI Power Coach, we go through fairly significant strength and power testing. But in short, you know, assuming they pass medical, I'm going to want a vertical jump test. You know, for years now, I found vertical jump to be the strongest correlation between opportunity for club head speed. If you can jump, you can swing things fast. I'm also going to want to do a seated medicine ball throw and a sit-up and throw with a 4-kilogram medicine ball. So that's going to give me an idea of the power they have in their shoulder girdle, and the sit-up and throw is going to talk me a little bit about the power they have with a coordinated core throw and release. I am also going to go into some anthropometric measurements. I'm going to want to know their forearm length, their arm length. I'm going to want to know their wingspan in relation to height. I do some baseline hip speed testing. I'll test hand size, but I'll also use a grip strength meter to test grip strength at different diameters, and that's something I can use to match grip size to hand strength. Because, you know, as people have different origin insertion points within their hands and forearms, they're able to generate different maximum strength at different diameters. So we've seen people with smaller hands that generate significantly more speed with a bigger grip, and people with bigger hands that generate more speed with a smaller grip. You know, I guess I probably subscribe, Terry, to test everything and then figure out what matters.
awesome.
We have I have one more question here. Can you share with the audience some of the creative fitness / multi-sport activities you've come up with to help drive strength and power with the trail leg as part of the power program?
With the trail, okay, so I'm trying to cycle back through the last couple of years of the strange things I've asked people to do. I guess that, you know, one of the first one that comes to mind is sending people to the batting cage. Div 1 college player that I coach, I sent to the batting cage several times to just get her to start to generate power off the trail leg. You know, even just getting people to start throwing and get in the feel of how they transfer their weight. If you get one of your golfers to do basically anything besides hold a golf club, you're going to see them operate in a more efficient manner. I think a lot of that has to do with the way we learn sports. You know, when we're kids and we learn to kick a ball, throw a ball, do any of this kind of stuff, we just, you know, we kind of go do it. Some of us get better than others. Boy, can you imagine how tough it would be to throw a ball if we were taught to externally rotate our shoulder, pronate our hand, extend our wrist, you know, like it's just, you know, it's crazy. So for multi-sport context, I guess, you know, really what I do the most to generate trail leg power is I go to the sport they have experience with. You know, so if they have experience with tennis, I'm going to use tennis. If they have experience with baseball, I'm going to use baseball. If they have experience with throwing, I'm going to use throwing. You know, one of the things I'll try and do is relate it to their dominant hand. So one of the biggest challenges for most people out there will be when you get a what I'll call a cross-dominant golfer. When you get a left-handed person that's playing golf right-handed and wants to hit it farther, that can be a big challenge. So in that particular case, I would stay away from any of the previous ones that I talked about, because I'll say those are trail side dominant activities. The first thing I would go to would be, you know, left-handed golfer playing golf right-handed. I will go to throwing frisbees.
Okay.
And
So we have one last question that just came in from Cedric Dennis. Question is, in the learning process, would you first develop the vertical power with footwork and pressure, or rotary power with upper body synchronization and coordination?
So, sorry, can you run through the first part of that question again?
Absolutely. Would you first develop the vertical power with footwork,
Okay.
or rotary power with upper body synchronization and coordination?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I guess that's always the first question I'm gonna try and answer, and that's when I'm gonna rely on the data that we collect in the assessment. You know, a lot of that I need to understand what are the opportunities for power. So when we get to take a look at a person's COP trace, when we understand what their peak velocity is, when we can see the swing from multiple camera angles on V1, when we get their 3D information, when we have their movement capacity screen, usually the answer to that becomes clear because we understand what's the engine they're not using. You know, so if you know, for example, again, when we took a look at Randy earlier, there we're looking, okay, I got a big guy, I got tons of lateral left to right. I see the hips are square, the shoulders are pretty square at impact. I'm gonna start to attack the rotary engine. You know, when we get some, I guess, you know, following the examples that we were talking about today, when I get a female, particularly an older female. You know, I'm going to see a huge, massive backswing. Oh, gosh, I've seen almost 90-degree hip turns on the way back. See the body, you know, hugely open, tons of rotation back through impact, and they're barely moving the needle on the BodiTrak. I'm gonna start to work the vertical engine right away. So I think the answer for every client you deal with is going to be different, and the most important thing is to, you know, go through a thorough assessment of understanding. You need to know, what do they do right now? Where does their power come from now? And what are their current capacities? And if you answer those two questions, you'll have the answer to your question. You know, when you see low utilization and high capacity, that's instantly where you're going to want to attack.
Excellent, thank you. Well, Liam Mucklow, we are approaching 5 o'clock here Eastern Time, and it has been an enjoyable hour. And I'm sure our audience is very appreciative and thankful for all the information you've shared. And we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If anyone has follow-up questions, you guys can reach me. Liam@thegolflab.ca is my email. You can find me on Twitter at Mucklow Golf, or also reach me through my website, mucklowgolf.com. Thanks a lot, guys.
Take care.
Thanks, Liam.
Thank you, everyone. Goodbye.